we always underestimate you, but
you do, but that's okay. That's all right.
Those who deal with you underestimate you and live to regret it.
It's always good to be underestimated.
Your own business. Your father was successful in real estate. Obviously, been highly successful. What did you learn from your father?
Well, he loved to work, and he was happy. He was a happy man. He wasn't, one of these guys, and I know many of them, and you know many of them, they're in their psychiatrist every day. I say, what do you do? My father was a worker, and he loved to work. He'd work on Saturdays. He'd work on Sundays. He just liked it. He'd go to church, but after church, he'd go and work. He'd go check a building that he was putting up in Brooklyn. He was mostly in Brooklyn and Queens, and he just loved it. And I think more than anything else, not because of what he taught me lots of different things, but I watched him be a happy man and work until he was like literally 93. He was 93 years old when he died. And I said to myself, that's a pretty good formula, because I have a lot of friends, they take vacations for 6 weeks and 8 weeks and 3 months, and they're never happy. So I watched my father, so I like to work.
Gets to your children. You have 3 of them in the business now. How did you coax them? How did that come about? Because usually, if a parent wants you to do it, kids say no. If you want it, I don't want it.
I was blessed to have smart children. They did well in school. They got good marks. They didn't have problems. But also, I would.
What kind of environment you create for that to happen? Because you have a lot of smart kids who just.
Right, you have many smart kids that don't do well, and you have some kids that aren't so smart that work very hard that do very well. I mean, I've seen it many times. But I've been recognized for having done a good job. Now, I have 5 children, but the 3 that are in business, and a lot of it's because of the success of The Apprentice, where they go on and people get to know Ivanka and Don and Eric. But a lot of that was early upbringing. I'd always say to them, no drugs, no alcohol, no cigarettes. And now I add for Barron, and I'd drive them crazy. I'd say every time they'd leave, no drugs, no alcohol, no cigarettes. Repeat after me, and I'd have to repeat. They'd go, Ivanka would go, Dad, will you leave me alone? But I'd drum it into their heads. And you have to get through those artificial barriers. I call them artificial barriers because you can do something about it until it's too late.
Let me ask you a question I've wanted to ask you for months now.
Go ahead.
I have a sense that back on June 16th, what Donald Trump was thinking was, you know something? I might win a primary or 2. I might win a caucus or 2. But, the worst thing that's going to happen is the brand is going to be improved. I'll be better known. I'll be more famous than I am today. Business is going to be You never thought you'd be sitting here on this day as the nominee of the Republican Party?
It's such a great question and such an interesting question. And I think about it myself. I mean, I think I must have, Ted, because I do like to win. And I believe that if I didn't think I was going to win, I wouldn't have done it. So somewhere deep down in the mind, I must have said, I'm going to win.
How do you convince the doubters? How do you convince the people who are sitting out there, and there are a lot of people sitting out there saying, I can't believe that Donald J. Trump is the nominee?
My whole life, though, and you've covered me for a long time. We've known each other a long time. My whole life has been winning. I mean, I've won. Whether I did The Apprentice, went on television, same question.
You can't compare. Anything you've done before.
Tremendous success in business. Tremendous success with. I go into television. I do a show. It's a big success. I write books. They're very successful.
There's nothing.
No, I agree.
Nothing
for
like
anybody,
running president of the United States.
I agree. There's nothing like it.
I wouldn't say I'm fearless. In fact, I think I feel fear quite strongly. But if what we're doing is, what I'm doing is, I think is important enough, then I just override the fear. Mm-hmm. So, but it's not as though I feel it like more strongly than I would like.
And in which areas would you never go full risk if you still are fearful?
Well, it really depends on the stakes. If the stakes are high, if it's really important, then I will overcome the fear and just do it anyway. Mm-hmm. But essentially, I just drive overrides fear, but I feel the fear. It's kind of annoying. I wish I didn't. Okay. I wish I felt it less. Uh-huh. So, yeah. All these introspective questions are interesting. I don't get asked these very often. And then, I'm trying to think, what is an an accurate reply. And some of these, it's like it's hard to evaluate yourself on these things.
Which company you founded was the most risky at the start?
Well, probably SpaceX. I thought it had the lowest chance of success. I mean, I thought both Tesla and SpaceX would fail at the beginning.
You thought?
Yeah,
so,
sure.
Really?
Of course.
But nevertheless, you put all your money in that, in both.
I expected to lose it. Well, technically, what I thought was, well, I'll take half the money from PayPal, and if I lose half of it, that's okay. But then, of course, the companies encounter difficulties, and then I have a choice of either let the company die or put, all the money into the companies. And so I really didn't want the companies to die, so I put all the money in the companies.
Yeah.
And then I had to borrow money from friends to pay living expenses.
Yes.
So I actually went to Russia 3 times to look at buying a refurbished ICBM. Because that was the best deal. And I can tell you it was very weird going there in late 2001, 2002, going to the Russian rocket forces and saying, I'd like to buy 2 of your biggest rockets, but you can keep the nuke. That's a lot more. And that was 10 years ago, I guess, so they thought I was crazy, but I did have money, so that was okay. After my 3rd trip, I said, okay, well, what we really need to do here is try to solve the space transport problem, and started SpaceX. This was against the advice of pretty much everyone I talked to. One friend made me sit down and watch a bunch of videos of rockets blowing up. Let me tell you, he wasn't far wrong. It was tough going there in the beginning because I'd never built anything physical. I mean, I'd built like little model rockets as a kid and that kind of thing, but I'd never had a company that built anything physical. So I had to kind of figure out how to do all these things and bring together the right team of people, and so we did all that and then failed 3 times. It was tough going. Because the thing about a rocket is that the passing grade is 100%. You don't get to actually test the rocket in the real environment that it's going to be in. So I think the best analogy for rocket engineering is like if you want to create a really complicated bit of software, you can't run the software as an integrated whole, and you can't run it on the computer it's intended to run on. But the first time you put it all together and run it on that computer, it must run with no bugs. That's basically the essence of it. I'm actually fairly optimistic about the future of Earth, so I don't want to sort of people to have the wrong impression that I think we're all about to die. I think things will most likely be okay for a long time on Earth, but not for sure, but most likely. But even if it's sort of 99% likely, a 1% chance is still worth spending a fair bit of effort to ensure that we've backed up the biosphere, planetary redundancy, if you will. And it's amazing how even though you can show that something works on paper, and the calculations are very clear, until you actually have the physical object and they can drive it, it doesn't really sink in for people. And so that I think is something worth noting. If you're going to create a company, the first thing you should try to do is create a working prototype. Everything looks great on PowerPoint. you can make anything work on PowerPoint. But if you have an actual demonstration article, even if it's in primitive form, that's much more effective for convincing people. So we made the Tesla Roadster, and now we're coming out soon with the Model S, which is a 4-door sedan. Because after we made the Tesla Roadster, people said, oh, sure, we always knew you could make a car like that. It's an expensive car, and it's low volume, and it's small and all that, but you couldn't make a real car. Like, okay, fine, I've got to make that too. So that's coming out soon. I think the overarching point I want to make is that you guys are the magicians of the 21st century. Don't let anything hold you back. Imagination is the limit, and go out there and create some magic. Thank you.
I think like what we want to do is like set this up well right now. Like if you ever watch a movie like which is like 40, 50 years old, you see like maybe the parents smoking in front of a car with the kids in the back, and that seems insane now, but that was perfectly normal back then, right? So like the past always ends up like working in funny ways, and opinions evolve. I think the better question is like think about the future and like figure out in which ways are we making mistakes right now, and what should we change for the maximum? Like, and this is maybe beyond AI. What is lacking right now to steer us to the to maybe even the general recognition that the world is so much more awesome than I think we all could have possibly imagined, knowing full well around the margins there's lots and lots of problems. I'm not making light of those. But boy, is this like a sci-fi novel that's just like sometimes sounds actually like a bit on the nose, right? Like we have cryptocurrencies flying around the world. We have global pandemics that make us lock up and like actually work in unison on biohacking to fight them back. And then we have conversations with a model that you put out there in the world, and it's 100 million people interacting with it, and not just the people in the sort of glass towers in downtown, like places like this, New York and so on. It's everyone.
Yeah.
And it's a shared experience for the first time again in a while, after a lot of filter bubbles, and that's really, really meaningful, I think. So I supplied a lot there. The question to you is like, what are the edits you would make to the way people look at the world right now?
I think we have lost our collective sense of optimism about the future. For good reason, in some cases, but I think all of us should act as our duty to bring that back. I think we have lost a belief that the future can be radically better than the current world. I think a lot of people assume it's going to be worse, again, for good reason. The only way that I know to return to that sense of optimism and that sense of growth is to use technology to create abundance. This works. This is like a long-term sustainable strategy. As far as the systems that enable that, like the social systems, liberal democratic values, the governments we have in much of the world today, they enable the scientific and technological progress, but that is the only thing that drives real sustainable long-term economic growth. And if you don't have that, the future does not get better.